Chance today to continue on this journey of really going deep, doing deep dives with cats who have been on this planet a lot longer than I and have been healing people through vibration and rhythm and musicality for decades. And I get a chance today to speak to somebody who's a fixture in the greater Pittsburgh area, already a long lineage of music that came out of there. The Turrentine brothers and Booker Irvin and John Hurd and so many other badass musicians, Roger Humphreys, and the list goes on and on. And my guest falls right in that milieu. He's played with so many different cats, played in a lot of different types of settings, definitely comes from the Duke Ellington school that it's all music. And the subjective part is either it's good or bad. And so all we can do is inspire change in our world. Kenny Karsh, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thanks, Jake. It's nice to be here, and I'm excited to have this chat. It'll be fun.
Yeah, that most definitely. You know, I kind of wanted to just go off in a little bit of a different direction, just because so far from my understanding, aside from my peers, I'm 46, but some of the older guard, Jeff Lorber, Benny Maupin, John Clayton, they've all lost everything in the fires, and that's just a small thing. I mean, there's so many people that have been affected, and I just wonder how you feel when you're in mourning or something traumatic has gone on and it's affected your brothers and sisters. You know, how do you try to, outside of anything monetarily, how do you give back during times of suffering?
Well, here's the thing. That's really a devastating loss. I remember when the fires happened before, I remember reading about Lee Ritenour, who's absolutely one of my favorite musicians. And he had heart surgery at the same time his house was consumed. And he lost a lot of stuff. It's like, I couldn't really say, you don't know what you're going to do until you're in that situation. My heart goes out to people who have lost so much, and then it's a devastating time, and I really don't have an answer.
It's okay. No, I don't. It's very legitimate. It's. I guess more to the point. God forbid. Pittsburgh, aside from maybe a flood. Which I think did happen with the Carnegies at one point. There was this catastrophic flood, John Hurd told me, and then they donated all this money to the city. But God forbid anything happened to you, and you lost your life was intact, and your physicality and your health was intact, but you lost a lot of apparatuses and a lot of, things that we consider, very much almost, body parts or whatever. And I just wonder, it's all about how you feel about yourself, the inner work that you do inside about yourself and how you feel about who you are and how resilient you are. And I just wonder, it's a pretty, pretty wild hypothetical, but if that stuff was stripped from you, what would you, I know it's hard to know exactly what would happen in a hypothetical, but how much have you done inner work on yourself in order to preserve the sanctity of your psychic sanity?
I think it's an ever-evolving thing. It's like, how much does anybody do on anything? It's not just about instruments. People lose photos, they lose heirlooms, they lose so much. How much inner work does any of us do? Right. I basically am constantly, I would hope that everybody else is too. That's not for me to say, but it's like, I work on myself to try to stay centered. That's my goal as I get older, to just try to, as I told somebody who was going through a hard time, I said, be yourself, own yourself, love yourself. That's all you can do, because, something monetarily, not monetarily, I'm sorry, something like, an instrument goes up. I know instruments can be replaced. It's hard when, I have a very close relationship with my instruments, all of them actually. And I would be devastated if any of them were lost. But on the other hand, I I don't know. I would hope that I would just keep myself moving forward and know that, there will be other instruments coming my way, God willing. And I know when some of my friends were sick, like I know when Pat was sick, Pat Martino was sick, and I know Kenny Burrell was having issues. I mean, it's like, I can't do much because I don't have the funds of millionaires.
Absolutely not. I mean, it's
so
right.
like I would try to help. I help in hopes that my thought is like, if it were me, I would hope that somebody would help me. So the energy I would put out is to help, as best as I can help somebody else with that. You cannot, honestly, Jake, I don't think you can actually prepare yourself. There's a Pittsburgher, I think his name's Dale Fielder, I think. I might not have his name right. He lost everything, and he's just like devastated. He's been reaching out on Facebook. People have been responding, but I mean, none of us can imagine that. I think we're in Pittsburgh. We're pretty safe from most of this stuff, and so I don't want to move to LA anytime soon, obviously. But
no, I get it.
Yeah.
No, I mean, you. I remember the guy who connected us. Actually, I'm going to get a chance to see him tonight in a very different setting than I normally do. Angelo Versace. He's like my age, maybe a little bit older, but he talked about coming in from rural PA, 45, 50 minutes outside Pittsburgh to the Crawford Grill, and he had a trio, and I think his drummer now is pretty prolific, plays with John Batiste's band. But the point is that at the time they were very green in high school. I mean, they were learning, and they'd come in for a jam session, Crawford Grill, and Roger Humphreys was kind of, he was there as the elder statesman, kind of hosting the session. And, when they would finish their set or whatever, Roger would say, okay, good enough, keep going, you're doing all right. Or he'd say, that wasn't it, man. That was not, that didn't cut it. And Angelo told me, he's like, those rides home, those 45, 50-minute trips home were humbling. I mean, it was, they didn't feel good. They, and on the flip side, they didn't go home and cry. I mean, they obviously got it together, and looking back on it, it was truth. The truth that Roger provided them helped them grow. And I wonder, early on in your career, if you had a similar experience where it was somebody, they knew that you had a lot of potential and talent, but they were strong enough to tell you when it wasn't good enough, and how that impacted, the rest of your career.
Well, I've got a story. Okay, so I mean, I know I actually listened to a little bit of your interview with Roger. It's a very nice interview, by the way, and
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the Crawford Grill. We don't always talk about another club where I came up with, and a lot of other people did too, is Sunny Day Stage Door. Okay.
Wait, I'm sorry. What was it called? What was it called?
Sunny Day Stage Door.
Wow, Sunny Day Stage Door.
You know about that, right?
No, I've never heard of it.
Oh,
it's so hip, dude. So hip.
Okay, Jake, this is going to be a fun ride for you.
All right.
I'm going to go back a little bit.
Do your thing.
I was basically my paradise, my heaven, musical heaven on earth. Also, in my early days, was the University of Pittsburgh. Nathan Davis was, God rest his soul, was still here, and obviously, it's a new and exciting department. I spent so much time there. I actually was able to get into the pit jazz band. My mother kind of did her Jewish mother shtick, where Nathan said, "Yeah, he sounds good," and my mom says, "Great, but thank you. What are you going to do for him?" Jewish mother manager. You know how that goes. So anyway, but basically, and Harry Clark also, who was my vice principal at Peabody High School at the time, who was also actively musically active, and also he played flugelhorn. I wish he still played, but he was great. Flugelhorn, piano. He was a big mentor to me and all that. So this was a lot going on. So part of this was that I met J.C. Moses, and I remember when I first met JC, I mean, he was, you know who JC Moses is,
I
right?
can't believe that was the one name I left out of the Turrentines and Heard.
That's okay. So
Yeah.
JC was with Eric Dolphy, and Nathan was doing a gig with Vince Genova, Mike Taylor. God, it's amazing.
Oh
I'm
my
thinking
God.
it's good.
Oh my
Mike
God.
Taylor, Nelson Harrison, and JC, and they were doing a gig at the Encore, and JC came in, and JC had a lot of issues with drugs, and unfortunately. And when I first heard him, he came in shorts. I couldn't believe this guy. I mean, I think I'm like supposed to be a legend. But the night that I heard him play, when he was on the bandstand,
burning,
and they launched into Joshua. Here I am, like a 16-year-old kid. You know, thank God they let me sit at the Encore and watch this. And they just played some of the best jazz I've heard anywhere coming out of any place in the world. And JC, it was like I've never heard such taste and such just it was incredible. And so JC would hang at some of the jam sessions at the Stage Door. I was playing, Spider Rodinelli, was a big mentor to me too, and I was playing with him and Eric Kloss, also a mentor, which we could get into. But I'm playing, and I'm playing for pay. I mean, this is like pretty cool. I mean, I obviously sat in, a few times to get myself in there, but they were hiring me,
right.
A young whiz kid. And the thing is, the night I was playing and JC was in there, and basically I had a lot of chops, and I don't think I was playing all that good, but the audience was clapping, so hey, who cares, right?
That's right.
And JC's sitting in the corner, and he's looking at me with the kind of like sarcastic smile, and he says to me, "You sound real good," and I could tell by his voice that that's not what he was saying.
Whoa! Hold on. First of all, the Encore was another club, right? That was not the Stage.
Yeah, but stay on point with the Stage.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
There's a story here.
Go ahead. Yeah, do it.
Yeah, we got to go this because otherwise you got to go.
No, that's fine, man. Let's do it.
Okay. So basically, and then he said to me, and he had told me before, like, you got to tell a story when you play, none of this bullshit and all that kind of thing. And he says, and then he looks at me, he says, "What did I tell you?" And the rest of the night, I don't know what he was saying to me when I was playing, but he was sitting in and he was yelling at me, hammering me. I don't know what he said, but I knew it was good. And I got home that night. I was devastated. And I told my mother what was going on. And, my mother's an opera singer. So she, it's not that she, knew her shit musically. But she said, "Are you sure he was telling you?" I don't know. Was he right? I said, "Yeah, Ma." He was.
Yeah.
And the beautiful part about that is when I did listen to him, about a year later, we were playing, and he was very sick at that time. His kidneys were failing, and he didn't have long to live. And my parents came in that night, and he told them that he was thinking of taking some of the Pittsburghers to New York to make an album. And my mom told me that, and he didn't tell me that directly, but he told her. And I said, "Oh my God, that's amazing." I said, "He's not going to make it, Mom, but that means the world to me." And he died about 2 months later, but. That was the time when I got I've told that story so many times to my students because, you need that kind of push. It's not always pretty, but it's necessary so that you can grow because otherwise you're going to sit and just be a chopmeister and you don't want to do that.
Well, okay. This is absolutely an essential example. When he got on the bandstand, you were, just basically, you weren't understanding him word for word what he was yelling at you or telling you.
The music was going at the same time, so no. But I could tell by his attitude that he was directing some shit at me that I didn't have to know. He didn't have to say it. I didn't have to understand the words, but I could see what he was doing.
Was it like? And I don't want to oversimplify his genius, but was it like, less is more? You've said enough. You've told your story. I mean, what was the thing? Like, were you just in some cases just wanking?
2 words, Jay. Just 2 words of it. Stop bullshitting.
Jesus.
That's it. That's all.
Be yourself. Be yourself. Yeah.
Not even be yourself. Just stop bullshitting. It's like basically, you're finding your way, but tell your story. Roger said the same thing to people. It's like, and it's like that's the essence of any kind of music. It's like, if you're gonna play, be yourself, tell your story. But the thing is, JC knew I was like all chops, but he kept saying like, just slow your roll and just kind of like, do your thing. So it's important. That's the most important thing. I mean, you can learn the stuff. I mean, the best place to be is on the bandstand. I think there are much more. I don't think you have to be. I don't think you have to be nasty about it. But I've also was told. I was mentored by people. Ron Fedoli, who is one of my musical heroes. I still stay in touch with him. Wow. He was a bass genius, and Ron would be like, his approach would be different. He would say, like, Ken, I shouldn't even tell you that. I'm sorry, man. I don't mean, I'm not trying to but you're kind of overplaying in this part. It's like those little things there. It's like, because there are ways to get the message across. But the point is, the music lessons are basically this: be yourself, stay out of the way, communicate. I mean, because a lot of times people just get up and it's about the rhythm section. I'm the soloist. I'm the king here. I'm the main person. So, you have to back me. And what I learned from so many people is like, it's not about that. Even when you're soloing, you're still part of the band. And it's like you're playing to impress. And a lot of people do play to impress. And we all do at some point. But just to be able to, just play and, be sincere, and that's what I learned from anybody who I came up with. I mean, the elders that I was with. I mean, so I mean.
Well, let me ask you. I mean, JC. I mean, Rock Alarm Bob Moses grew up in the same apartment building as Max Roach, Mengus. Mm-hmm. Lee Morgan. You saw that documentary maybe about his wife killed him at Slugs. I mean, dude, Lonnie Smith, and I mean, these guys had a story to tell. They were telling their life story. You listen to some of the tribal urgency in some of these masters, J.C. Moses. They were talking about their life, the highs and lows. And, it's harder today for students, even Kenny Karsh, I mean, middle class, Jewish family, Pittsburgh. I mean, when you say a story to tell, you're talking about the day that you had? I mean, I just say to myself, for younger cats, it's hard to have a story to tell when you grow up in suburbia. I don't
agree with that.
Go ahead, push back. Talk to me. Yeah.
Your story is your story. I was on the road with Jimmy McGriff. Okay, I don't know if you knew that. I was. And I spent a good year out on that road. I did a recording with the sax player, Arnold Sterling. These guys on the road were my second family. They were my brothers. I love them dearly. I'm still wondering where Vance James, the drummer, is. Arnold passed away, unfortunately. Jimmy's gone too.
Right.
But when I have tapes, I have recordings of the time we were in, I think, in Mizpah, New Jersey, when we played a gig, and I had like a walk, like a Sony tape recorder, and I taped that gig, and it was heaven on earth, man. But I mean, we were out there playing, but it's like that was my story. Here I am, a white Jewish kid, with a Jufro on the road with the McGriff band, being mistaken, being questioned by this one guy in the bathroom. He looked at me and says, "You're white, aren't you?" It's like I was like surprised, flattered, and I was like, "Oh, okay,"
Yeah.
But the thing is like my story was not like their story. They came up with more. There's no way I'm going to have the same kind of story, but my story, nevertheless, is my story. And it's like I think maybe to your question, it's like somebody coming out of the suburbs from their bedroom in their protective environment goes, plays in a jam session, has no idea like of any of that, and they wouldn't. But they also have their own pain. They also have their own rejection. And as long as you're telling your truth, something's going to come out somehow. It may not be like, you're starving on the road. Like I heard in Rogers saying, paying for your own hotel, which I can so relate to because that's what we do on the road with Jimmy McGriff. We had to pay to play.
Right.
Right. And so I've been through that. I wouldn't trade that experience for the world. Students, musicians now, they're not going to get that because jazz organ is now mostly, I'm sorry to say, mostly going to be in the lounges of Vegas and the well-to-do neighborhoods. It's not going to be like the Chitlin circuit where like all these people are there to help you take your organ in like on the south side of Chicago. It's not going to be the same thing.
I mean, was Jimmy taking that thing in a hearse? Did you have a hearse in the back of your?
No, we didn't have a hearse, but we had his Ford Econoline van that he loved more than I think anything, and also had some very fancy tires which blew out several times under the load, which was a little scary because we made we were lucky that we didn't have a more serious accident. And so, that's what we went in. I mean, everything was in the back, and, all instruments were in the back. There were 4 of us, so we were in the front, middle and front seats. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't a hearse. I mean, not like, Pat Martino went on the road with Charles Airland, and they went out in a hearse. But no, they didn't. That didn't happen. No, it was.
No, I did. It's.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I just, 14 years in, my first interview when I got on this path with the musicians was Pat, and he talked about, going to
Pat Martino.
Yes, he became a dear soul brother, and I went to his brownstone in Philly, and rest in peace to the most amazing dude of all time. And he,
yes,
his father used to bring him into the barber shops and say, "Look at my son," and he'd play Stella by Starlight, or he'd play some Johnny Smith tune, and and Erland at the time was playing tenor sax, and they went to see Jimmy Smith and Kenny Burrell in Atlantic City, and the next thing you know, Erland's playing organ. But the point is, Pat left high school, and moved to Harlem because that's where Don Patterson was. That's where Billy James was. That's where Small's Paradise. That's where the culture was. So I'd love you to talk about that. Indigenous Pittsburgh culture that manifested all these incredibly. I mean, John Hurd used to sit. I forget where he was in some kind of park. Or he would bring his upright bass, and people would be yelling at him, "Hey man, sound more like Ray Brown." He's like, "I'm trying, man, I'm trying," And George Benson would, nobody let him really play for a long time because they just thought of him as a singer. But it was a fiercely independent, headstrong community of musicians. And I just wanted, when you hit the scene, I just kind of wanted you to talk a little bit about that indigenous. If there was not a South Side like Chicago, but if there was a black part of town, and if you had to go seek that out yourself.
I actually was more I'll be honest with you, I wasn't involved in that part of it so much as I was involved in the Oakland side of it, where it was being crossed over into, as opposed to, I occasionally go to the Crawford Grill, but I wasn't doing sessions there. I was involved at Pitt. I was playing, I was getting a lot of experience playing. I mean, being under like Nathan Davis's, baton, so to speak, was like, Nathan was a genius as far as I'm concerned.
I have to send you, I'm crying right now because I did such a seminal interview with Nathan, and I know that man was beyond genius, man.
Yeah, he was very much criticized in the city because people thought he was all about the chops, but he wasn't. And he put a lot of soul and feeling into his playing. And
the Kansas City cat, yeah.
I was honored enough to actually. I'm on one of his recording. God, I can't remember the name of the recording. God, I'm getting old, but still, I was on that with and Dave Baker was on that. So it was like,
oh my God.
And I remember that his son Pierre was kind of, facilitating, because Pierre had the audio and tech knowledge that Nathan didn't have. But it was great. It was like a really coming around. But I was part of the Oakland scene, the Shady Side scene, and people were coming up in that scene all the time. I mean, I actually at Pitt, that's where I first met George Jones, because I was actually featured. We did this one concert with the Pitt Jazz Band, and then we broke off into a little quartet, which included myself, the late Frank Richmond, and I can't remember. I think Akira Suzuki was playing drums. He was from Japan. He was a student, at Pitt, and he and I got to know each other. And I did my first trio gig with him and his friend Hideo Shimada. And basically, George Jones was playing with us, and he had to actually come up and says, "Oh man, I'm sorry, man. I should have let you know. I shouldn't have played on." I said, "George, he played. He's still like." I've done 2 CDs. He's on both of them. I love George. This was the crossing over,
Wow.
So I was more involved in that side of it, kind of like, I was with Eric Kloss a lot, so I can't really comment on experiences at the Crawford Grill because, their DNA came over to our side of the fence, but I wasn't always going over to the hill. Also, I was kind of shy at the time, so I, wasn't really strong. So, I didn't know if I'd feel safe there, to be honest with you. And
No,
but that was probably like, to be honest with you, that was a myth that I had. And to be fair, that was my young way of thinking. Upbringing. You want to talk about upbringing? Look how we're brought up, right? It was a different time then.
Well,
So,
I mean, it's fascinating. Would you say that Pittsburgh? I mean, I've chronicled Philly. I mean, the amount of cats, McCoy and Train and Lee Morgan and Mickey Roker and Reggie Workman. I mean, so Philly, I know that scene okay. Obviously, Vince Montana used to play. They had gigs there outside of Sigma Sound and stuff. But, like, was Pittsburgh a racially integrated? It was an integrated place, meaning you could get a taste of culture of all different ethnicities, even if you weren't going over the hill.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. You could. I mean, we still went over. Like I said, I didn't jam as much at the Crawford Grill as other people did. I played there a couple times, with Spider.
Who is Spider, by the way? Where is that cat? I mean, who is that cat?
Oh, see, this is interesting, and I'm pausing for a minute because I have to think about this for a minute. There's a part of Pittsburgh history that is basically has been not addressed.
I completely agree. I completely agree. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I mentioned Sunny Day Stage Door. I don't even think you know what that is.
Dude, you're no. This is why I do my show. I mean, these are new vectors for me. Yeah.
This is great. This is great. Okay, so let me kind of rewind a little bit. So when Eric, you know who Eric Kloss is, right?
Well, just before you go on, I mean, in 2001, I was before 9/11. I knew that I graduated with a broadcasting degree from Boston University, and I'll make this really short. And we still had landlines, and the internet was still a dial-up modem. And I looked on Carnegie Mellon Music website, and they had Eric Kloss's home phone number. Now, I fell in love with jazz because I heard Eric Kloss with Pat Martino on Desperado, on 1, 2, 3. Yeah. And all of a sudden, it was like, well, this cat. And so I called him, and we spoke for over an hour about Siddhartha and all this other stuff, and it was so healing for me. So that was really my first interview. But then a couple weeks later, called him back, and his wife was out of her mind, and I'm in Boston at the time, and next thing you know, I'm getting a call from the Western Pennsylvania Police Department, and it's like, are you fucking kidding me? And that woman, It breaks my heart to know that she pulled him away from music. It bothers me to no end. But that being said, he got me into jazz. The floor is yours.
Well, okay. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great warm up.
Yeah, no, warm up, dude.
I'm gonna basically say this. Eric was one of my, I loved him like a brother. He was like a brother to me.
Yeah.
And he was a big influence on me. I recorded an album with him, Celebration. It's no longer in print, but
was it on Muse?
It was on Muse.
Oh my God, I got to get that. I see that once in a while. Yeah.
I mean, you'll see if you go on YouTube and look up Celebration or Samba Express, you'll see it. Okay, and I was recorded there with Barry Miles, Mike Richmond, and Terry Silverlight. And
oh my God, my heroes!
I'm proud of that. I was 20 years old when I did it. That to me is like one of my crowning achievements in my young days. But I first met Eric at the Stage Door. They wouldn't let me come in because I was underage. But I said I wanted to meet him, and I talked to him. He came out. I said, "I'd love to take lessons with you." He says, "Well, okay, man. How about when we start Saturday, man?"
I love
that was it. That was the beginning of our relationship. Through him, I met Vic Juris. I met so many people, through him, and just hanging. I learned so much from him. And this was all at Sunny Day Stage Door, which was Mecca in Oakland. I mean, people like, Richie Havens. I wasn't there for this, but Richie Havens came in. Joni Mitchell came in. People would come and hang at this place. And there was a lot going on. Spider Rondinelli was the one that was responsible for all that happening. He was a drummer, and basically his thing was swing. He was like, talk about like somebody who played for the love. He embodied, like he said, jazz is my religion. That's how
I freaking love this stuff, man. I freaking love it. Yeah.
And you should definitely look it up. Actually, if you go on my Facebook page, I have a tribute to him in my photo album, so you can look to that. But the thing is that that's where I came up. meeting people. I got a chance to play with. Actually, I part of the reason why I screwed up my SATs is because I played a gig with Dave Friedman the night before the test, and I'm not going to turn down an opportunity to play with like a master vibe player.
Dude, I love that man. That did 2 great interviews with that cat. Love him.
Yeah.
Hold on a second. I want to be clear though. I want to be clear about the stage door.
Yeah.
It sounds to me, but this is pre-Karsh. Karsh was a young cat, early 70s, late 60s. It sounds to me like it was a folk club. I mean, unless you're saying that Havens and Joni used to come in and just hit.
No,
yeah.
just hang.
They just for the hang. Yeah, okay.
They were in town. They weren't playing there. This is like Spider. This was Spider. Like Spider's. Sunny Day was actually his real name was David Day. I used to get up there. Actually, he'd do a shtick where he played with Bill Haley in the Comets, and it's part of when you're in heaven, God has to sing "Rock Around the Clock." So we did that. But
dude, this is unbelievable baptism.
Yeah,
man.
It was fun, and a lot of people came in. I mean, we played with Bob Berg there.
Yeah,
Dave Lehman, Steve Schlegel, Vic would come in. We played Eric. I have a CD. I'll have to find it. I have a CD of the night that Eric and I played, and it was exciting because Eric was playing. There was no keyboard, so it was Eric. When I would play, Eric would play piano, and so it was. And Eric actually was a pretty decent piano player. This was a great place to grow, and the band like Dave LaRocca on bass, Ron Fedoli on bass, Virgil Walters on bass. There was a lot of people that came through that town. And so came through that club. I mean, and so there's but nobody talks about the stage door. They talk about the Crawford Grill, and I get that. The Hurricane, yes, that was the history where a lot of the greats, the great master artists you're talking about. But there were a lot of other, the stage door was also getting their own masters in there, and nobody talks about that.
You know what I got to tell you, because it's just so the way you're describing it. When you do, and not to say that they didn't make some money or be able to pay the bills, but when you're on that love, devotion, fire, burn like Spider was, for some reason that stuff goes right into the sanctified area. But now it's chronicled. Now it's going to be part of my milieu. I do want to ask you about Klaus, more specifically, the guy that I was fascinated. Again, Kenny, you were 10 years old when this was going down, but no. The part that I'm about to talk about is Alton Klaus. Did you know Alton?
I knew the whole family.
Oh my God! Please, this is making my year because I got to tell you.
I'll be honest with you. There are certain things. I'm going to put this out there right now. I'm not sure what you want to get from this, but there are certain things I'm not necessarily going to disclose.
Dude, I am not I don't care about that. I care about the love.
Okay.
And what I'm talking about is that what was remarkable to me when I first got into music, specifically jazz, reading the liner notes, was that Alton was responsible for connecting with Don Schlitten so that this visually impaired, basically blind saxophone player was playing with Cedar Walton and all these freaking shaman musicians. And I'm like, how? At the Western Pennsylvania School for the Blind. I said, how did this happen? I wound up teaching the visually impaired for 8 years, met my ex-wife there because of Eric Klaus. I mean, this is profound. So break it down. I would really love you to talk about what the essence and wisdom that you learned from Eric.
Well, I mean, it's the essence of wisdom. I mean, well, first of all, you're right. Alton Klaus. I mean, basically, he was instrumental in getting his son hooked up with the right people. Pretty much, he was like to Eric what like Mickey was to Pat. So
yeah, I
did. I mean, so that was great. I mean, Eric got a chance to play with some of the incredible people, but Eric was also playing his ass off.
Oh, definitely.
And basically, as far as like what I learned from Eric was like just in addition to working on some dynamite cool techniques, which was fun because he was very into that. I was just excited. The first listen I remember having, I still have my handwritten notes. I had to scan them at this point because they were falling apart. But learning like the chorus to a portrait of Diana from Pat, and Eric didn't. Eric only played. He didn't play on Desperado per se. He played the backing.
100%, 100%.
But that's all he played. The album that was instrumental for him was Consciousness, where Pat played.
Oh my God, I'm losing mine.
That's great. Yeah. But basically, what I learned from Eric It was just, just having joy in just being diverse in terms of like not he was listening to Indian music. He was listening to like Elliott Carter, classical music.
Oh,
He was
God.
listening to George Crumb. I mean, all this was kind of playing in. I mean, he was basically influenced a lot by Pat. We all were. All of us like our musical DNA to Pat Martini.
I freaking love Kenny Karsh, dude. You're making my day, dude.
So basically, but I learned about that, and plus, the hangs, that we do like after the club. We've been what used to be Howard Johnson's, which is now Panera.
Yeah, right.
Used to go there. Eric, we need a ton of food. I remember. Like he could put away. He never gained a pound, but he could put a lot away of food. We'd be hanging and just talk philosophical nonsense. It wasn't necessarily deep, but we thought it was. Basically, and it was just a great.
Oh my God, man!
And I know, I'm not going to disagree with you about what you said.
It's fine. You don't have to say nothing bad. I know what I expect. Yeah.
And I'm not going to go into that, but I can say this. Before all that, there were some amazing times. The celebration recording was pretty intense. I remember there was one, on the piece, The Force, that we did. I remember, I wrote out a lot of those because, of course, somebody had to write out the music for it. So I wrote out a lot of that in terms of so we could all play it because Eric couldn't obviously write the music. And so that was kind of like I was his scribe for that album as well. And it was just such a learning, and just looking back and playing those now, and I can still play those, shout for that. It was just how to put stuff together, how to put like chromatic lines together. And then when I did the solo on The Force, I thought I screwed it up. And we only did that one take. And I remember I was staying with Eric, I was sharing the room that night at the hotel. I said to him, man, I don't know, man. I'm not happy with that solo. He says, no, man, it'll be all right. It'll be good. You'll get a different perspective. When I hear it now, what I thought was a glitch was actually space. And I thought, oh, that works. When you're behind your instrument, you're very, very biased. It's like you're over judgmental, so to speak. At least I am. And so when I heard it back, it's like, that's actually my favorite solo on the record now, because it's like, it makes sense, It's like, I'm 20 years old and I'm, playing my heart out on this recording, and it's like, yeah, it was pretty cool.
So this is like conjuring up so much emotional stuff for me. I've interviewed now, thank you, except for Eric, this entire album, all dear compatriots of the Jake Feinberg Show. When did you? Because this whole. Silverlight being this ridiculous prodigy at 14, playing on White Heat with Pat and Barry Miles. Were those guys coming to the stage door? How did that whole confluence? Or did you only meet those guys on the session at that time?
I met Barry at the stage door. Okay, because Barry was traveling with his group.
That's right.
Which then at that point included Vic Juris, and Vic had been coming in.
Wow.
Eric brought in Vic Juris to the stage door, and that was something. Because I remember I brought my guitar in the night when Vic was playing, and thought I was going to get up and play on the bandstand. And Spider just looked at me and says, "No, man, sit down and listen." And the best thing he could have done, because when Vic played, I thought, "Oh my God, finally somebody who basically played the way I was trying to play, and I'm watching him do it." And he's like not much older than me; he's 21. At the time, I was 16,
right.
Right. And I'm going, oh, shit, I want to do that. And so, and then Barry came in, so I met Barry. And then, obviously I met Barry thoroughly at the celebration recording. And actually, we basically rehearsed at Barry's place, which was just a trip. It was just wonderful. The vibe was good, and imagine being in this place, which is kind of like, hip, hip hang with Barry, his wife Elaine, and Terry, Terry who's his brother. Silverlight's their family name. And so, and Mike Richmond, and, there's another drummer, who wasn't on the session, but he was a friend of Barry's, Ronnie Glick, who's just the sweetest, one of the sweetest people I know, and an incredible drummer in his own right. And So he was hanging with his wife, Michelle, who's also a wonderful singer. And this is what a vibe this was, you know?
The vibe, man.
So,
The
yeah.
vibe.
Yeah.
This is so magical. I went down to Nashville to see some music before COVID, and I wound up hanging with this cat. I'll send you the interview, but he was on this other album that, it was a Kloss album. I remember finding it in near Berklee School of Music in Boston, called 1-2 Free, and Ronnie Krasinski. Did you know that cat?
Oh, I know Ron very well. Yeah.
Okay, Ron is one. We had such a ball, and I'm just saying that there is this angular, elastic lineage of music going back to Spider and before in Pittsburgh that really needs to be vetted more. And I just think that, all I know about Eric is that, when I listen to him with Jack DeJohnette and Chick Corea and Dave Holland, man, he is channeling the spirits of Train, but he's doing it in his own voice. I don't know.
Well, I like to think, like, I know we all get caught up in, and I kind of maybe think of like rephrasing a lot. Somebody came up to me and said to me, like, I can't tell who you sound like, George Benson or Pat Metheny. I said, well, I've listened to both, but people don't want, like, people when they come up to you and say that, I feel like they don't want you to sound like yourself. It's like, it almost feels like they want you to sound like somebody they can relate to.
That's right.
But
no, you nailed it. Totally.
The thing is, like, when you're talking to people about, when you hear me play or anybody play, you're going to hear all the people that walk before them. When a doctor takes the Hippocratic oath, they also take the oath to, like, honor the footsteps of the physicians, the steps they're walking in.
Absolutely.
Everybody has it takes the village to raise an individual, musically, medically, whatever. And basically, I own who I sound like. Some musicians hate it when, I know some people, like, I remember, God rest his soul, Jimmy Ponder. I think if you told Jimmy he sounded like Wes, I don't think he'd like to hear that. But in fact, he had a Wes influence, so there's no way he's going to duck it. But at the same time, when I heard Jimmy play, and in fact, Jimmy was the one who got me the gig with Jimmy McGriff, and I was replacing him in the band. Wow. So that's some big shoes to fill. And Jimmy, on the albums that we were touring at the time, Jimmy played some of the best stuff I've ever heard him play. But when I hear him, I don't sit there and say, "Oh, he sounds like Wes Montgomery," or he's channeling Wes. No, he's channeling Jimmy.
Dude, no, that's when I go up to my peers. When I go up to my peers today, it's like I instill exactly that. I say, you sound like yourself. You sound like yourself. That's the highest compliment any improvisational instrumental musician could get.
Right, but it's also the last compliment a lot of people get.
In reading up on you, you've spent a lot of time in symphonic orchestras or performances along those lines, and I recognize the bread is probably pretty good. I just wonder if you could talk about how you still can get off on a situation when you're sort of in a show's running for months at a time and you're basically playing the same parts every night, and how as a jazzer, as an improviser, how do you stay stimulated in that environment? Or is it's just money's enough?
Money. Wait, what was the last thing you said? Money's a what?
Or is the money enough? You got to sing for your supper.
Okay, I'm going to dispel a myth right now, at least from my end. Okay, yes. Because jazz musicians will say, I'm a jazz musician, but I play these other gigs because I have to. Okay, I'm going to be honest with you. I don't subscribe to that. I enjoy playing, musicals when I get them. I don't just do it for the money. I love doing it. I love the diversity. I love playing different instruments. I also love the question when people say to me, what's your favorite instrument to play? It's like whatever's in my hands. Okay. Because there's art. Music is art. I think what hurts jazz a lot now is when jazz musicians become elitist about their creativity. I'm not going to hold back on that. You know, I don't like it when I see it happening. I'm sure that, some people think that, I sell out when I play musicals. But I just, no, I don't agree with that. I get great satisfaction from playing that. I mean, I just did the Michael Jackson musical. Um, oh, I wonder, people would say, "Man, how did you survive that as a jazzer?" It's like, well, Quincy Jones was one of Michael's producers. You tell me, right?
Right, right.
So that I think that gives a strong answer from my point, definitely.
No,
So yeah.
I think more maybe you can speak to other cats out there about how you still stay, what you get off on when something is, and it's beautiful. It's
Hmm.
just there's more of a formula aspect to it.
It's not about, improvisation. Improvisation is improvisation. It's not necessarily jazz. Okay. So I could get together, hopefully. One of my dearest mentors, he's now deceased, unfortunately, was Dr. Joseph Jenkins. And he was a phenomenal, he was a historian, he was a musician, composer, mostly a composer. He loved to improvise. And what was good with him and me is that I have a little Novocaine in my jaw. So if I stutter a little bit, pardon me.
Yeah,
But
go ahead.
basically, um, we would get together at faculty parties and we would improvise together, and I wasn't playing bebop. He would play some kind of a classical based thing. I would play a classical based, idea back. It's all about music, and that's the main thing. What I got off on the Michael Jackson musical, especially, I can tell you the rhythm section. Oh my God, they were amazing. They were phenomenal, and so I'm playing the parts. Really, they kind of like mirrored the parts that Quincy Jones basically did, and I'm
Right.
playing those parts authentically. If a guitar, if a as a guitar player, or speaking as a guitar player, if I can't get joy out of that, I shouldn't be playing the show. So like, how do I, it's not about, I don't have to improvise all the time. If somebody gives me a part, they want me to play it, they want me to do the best that I can. I'm going to enjoy that. And so that's how I can feel good about it. It's not just about the money. So that
Absolutely. No, I wonder about like because you can't uh, necessarily take as many bars as you want because it's a musical. Do you ever play the same solo the same way once, or is it always different?
you mean on a Broadway musical?
Yeah.
If there's an opportunity to do a solo, I do a solo. It's not written in stone that you have to play the same thing again. It might be only one or two bars, but that one or two bars, it's really a judgment call at the time. So, it's not about serving myself. Okay.
Right.
I don't could care less how many bars I get. In fact, I think a lot of people take too many bars. Okay. I mean, that's why, thank God, there are producers who kind of can like put a put a filter on that. Like, I don't want to take 12 courses. Charlie Parker said it in one or two, and one of my favorite players of all, I've always liked the solos that are to the point and just mean something. So in a show, in a musical situation, if I have an opportunity to make it a little different, that's great. But I'm serving the show. It's about the show. It's always about the music. Even in jazz too. We're playing as a group, if that makes sense.
No, I'm harkening back to one of my interviews with Rick Marotta, where he's like, I've seen people say all they need to say in 15 seconds. It's I would love you to talk to younger cats about how you cultivated over time, maybe a specific training ground, so to speak, where you really learned, because I don't care if it's, 2 bars or, whatever it is, how long, you have to be able to tell a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I wanted you to talk a little bit about how you cultivated that skill, because a lot of the times, some of my friends are absolutely tasteful musicians and they get that.
Right.
And then there's
Hmm.
other times where you get up there and cats are cranked up to 10, they got nowhere else to go after that. And so I just wonder about the storytelling component, no matter how long the solo is. Was there an early on or just an example of where you really learned to hone that skill?
Well, we talked about that in the previous part of the interview with when I mentioned JC Moses, and anybody who was mentoring me was always saying, tell a story, but there's no specific instructions to how to do that. I mean, really, it involves, uh, Jake, the only training it involves is listening. Okay. I
Yeah.
mean, I'll listen, I was recently just listening. I can't remember who it was, but I was listening to their solo and I was thinking like, oh my God, that's beautiful. And they're just telling a story. But I can't remember who it was because I do a lot of listening and especially in my car. But it's just, you know, you're when you're improvising, you're composing. You're always composing. I mean, you know, I there's no real training for that other than like listening. It's like, I mean, if it's a language, you learn it really by listening. Reading is a skill. Reading music is a skill, just like reading any language you speak is a skill. More you read, the better you get at it. But you didn't learn to talk by reading, right? Does that make
No.
sense? Right.
But I believe that you have to correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, your generation was, you guys learned to hear the music before you learned to read the music.
I think that's any generation, Jake.
Uh, Gary Bartz would fundamentally disagree. I mean,
And
certainly,
he's welcome to do that. I don't.
no, what I'm saying
I'm
is
okay with that.
younger generations, because of the codification of street languages like jazz and blues, they're
Hmm.
learning to read the music before they can hear it. Therefore, their ears are locked. And that's why you have a homogenization of sound. You can't tell who anybody is anymore because their ears are locked because they've learned to read before they can hear. That's just
But
the reality
yeah,
from a lot of music. I mean, I'm not right. I don't care if I'm right or wrong. I'm just saying
yeah.
there's a reason why I can't tell, who the saxophone player is or the drummers are, because you go back in time and every single drummer you could tell right away who it was. You could tell the
Well,
same thing about horn players. And
right.
now, because of this lack, people call it ear training, but
Ah,
back then that was what it was. I mean, fundamentally you came up listening and
right.
hearing as an autodidact before you learned to read the music.
Um, I still don't. I'm still gonna stick by what I
No, no, I
said.
love this, dude. No, it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
fire
mean,
away, man. There's no
I
right
mean,
or
I'm still
wrong.
gonna stick to what I said, because, I mean, I respect a lot of people's thinking. But I've seen, especially guitar. I mean, guitar, people when they play guitar have a tendency to pick it up by first fooling around with it. They don't care about reading music. I mean, my God, they're doing tablature, which I'm not against, by the way. I will state that. But the thing is that, I mean, you have to start. I mean, I know some people, when they pick it up, they're listening before they're reading. I don't know a lot of players who are doing like any heavy metal riffs that are actually reading it on a piece of music. Okay, so it's like,
Yeah, I
I
dig.
I mean, it's like the musicians today don't have the opportunities that we had coming up, unfortunately. Okay. Uh, Basically, we to go into the clubs to sit in and be mentored by the older musicians,
Hmm.
and if they get out, a lot of times they can just jam with them with their peers, which is okay. They should do that too because we jammed with our peers. I mean, I remember, coming up jamming with, I remember jamming with Keith Stebler and the late John Rockwell. I mean, technically they were older than me, but they were still kind of like on a peer level, and they were great players, and I was learning from them. Just, when you're listening and you're being open to how the melody moves, just, sooner or later it's going to sink into your playing. And of course, you're fueling that with the musical DNA that you need to fuel it with. Like, you need to have a basic understanding of how things work, not complicated, just the way you can explain it to yourself. So I don't think that musicians are being trained to read and then play. I don't think they're being exposed as much as they used to. But I know some of the players coming up, they're jazz players, they're really doing great, and they'll find their voice. I think if you can't recognize somebody, it means that that person is trying not to be themselves. They're trying so hard to be who they will never be. They will sound similar to them, but they will never be them. So
Well,
it's
some
up
people
to
would say that like that's the lean towards conformity that sociologically we're all going towards, where it's like, don't be yourself because you can't commodify that. So you have to sound like, I mean, even people going to concerts today. I
yeah,
mean, we have
okay.
such a farm system here, and
Uh-huh.
yet, my dear friend Patrick Morris, an incredible bass player, he did a tribute. He can't sell it as the Pat Morris band. He's got to do a tribute to Jocko, or somebody says, "Oh yeah, I'm going to do renditions of my Keith Jarrett song." So it's got to be what is familiar to folks that have the money that are willing to dish it out to pay for it. I mean, to me, it's like that's antithetical to how music vocabulary grows. And I know I'm an outlier. It's just like
Okay.
you had cats like Bill Graham back in the day who were
Uh-huh.
like, okay, you know, we have Sly Stone on the bill. We have the Preservation All Jazz Band. We have this really cool Latin funk band, Malo. And in the hippies, you may not know who that band is, but you need to dig these cats. And so they would actually, go and pay to go see them. So now it's this. I guess maybe you can talk to you about your students, the students you have. How do you try to break them out of that conformity bag?
I can't, I don't have any, I mean, all I can do is, teach them what I can. I mean, they're not gonna, I can't teach, nobody can teach anybody how to improvise.
Right.
It cannot be done. You can give
Go
them
deeper on that.
foundation.
I want you to.
It,
That's so
you
interesting.
can
I'd love you to
no,
talk about it.
you can give them foundation, you can give them knowledge, but in the end, it's like, what do you do with that? It's like I remember reading an interview with Barney Kessel where he said, "I could show you how to do a G7, but what are you going to do with that G7?" You know, and
Right.
I it's like as far as like um I can give them foundation. I can show them how to connect things, but I think what stops people is, I mean, and I don't think it's conformity. I think it's been this way for a while, where somebody says, "Well, when you play this over this chord, are you thinking like C major seven, or like are you four tones? Or you think it's like Jesus Christ? I don't know. I'm not doing any of that.
Right. You're
Okay,
not thinking. I mean, you're not
no,
thinking.
no, and actually, Pat Martino in his Open Road documentary,
Oh God.
he basically brings that up. He said it's going too fast. There's a lot going on, quite a lot of things to think about. What you're going to explore, but once the performance begins, anything can happen, and that's really what it is. It's like you're going. Even when actors like go on stage and do a play, I mean, one night they might do something, the same play, but then all of a sudden the inflection is a little deeper on something the next night of that performance, and somebody comes up and says, "I don't know what you did, but what you did made me cry. Last night when I saw that same performance, I didn't cry there, but tonight I did. You did. I did. You know, it's like that performance is not going to go like, well, I just decided to like channel my inner. They're not going to do that crap. And actually, another point I wanted to make before we got into that, as far as like conformity, when Wes Montgomery was playing and he was successful, um, this is a story that I've heard, more than once, so I know it's true. He wasn't bitter about it because he was happy to make money and provide a decent, place for his family and the whole bit. He had a big family. He said the people out there are not coming to hear me. They're coming out to sing along to tequila. So they want me to play it exactly like I did on the record. But on his gigs, he was playing straight jazz. But they hated when he did that because they wanted to show their friends how hip they were. So
I appreciate you bringing that. That's a great, no, because I mean, he was a cement mixer and had 8 kids, and I mean, he was fine with the bread. It's just so interesting to hear you say, and I believe that story because when he was staying at the Booker T. Washington Hotel in San Francisco, and cats
yeah.
like Michael Howell would show up as young, cocky guitar players,
Hmm.
and Wes would just burn them in their face with heavy, heavy, bop licks. There was no tequila, so it's like, but yeah, it's about so.
I'm not talking about Michael Howe or laying the guitar. By the way, where is Michael Howe? I don't know. That's
Yeah,
another
I
story.
can give you his
Great.
number, dude. Honestly, we did the most epic. it really was one of the most cosmic things about 12, 13
Yeah.
years ago.
But basically,
no, no,
but basically,
yeah,
I'm talking. I love Michael. He's great.
yeah,
I am talking about like not guitar players. So you're relating to the musicians. I'm talking about Wes going and playing in front of an audience, and I'm going to assume a white audience,
yep.
okay, because they love to hear him go. Do like
Dun, da, da, da,
do
da,
it,
da,
yeah,
da.
or anything that commercially sold. I mean, on his later albums. And the best critique review I read was I forget who said it. I think it was Don DeMichael maybe, but he said it's just a pleasure to hear him state the melody, and God knows it was. Okay, okay, but it's like we're talking about like communication to your audience. I mean, it's like but Wes had to conform. He had no choice, and he knew he was
Absolutely.
conforming because the bottom line, and then people make this big deal about money. It's like audiences love drama with musicians. When we're struggling, they love that. Okay? They revel in the drama. But I don't revel in the drama because I've seen how drama can destroy people. And I think there's another way. Absolutely another way, you
Well,
know?
you mean band struggling through your parts, or actual
No, struggling through yourself.
drama within okay.
The drama of life that contributes to every person's story, you know?
Absolutely,
And it's
absolutely.
like I'm not going to go into personal details about, but I witnessed times with certain musicians who were just brilliant, who had demons, like incredible demons. And I think people got off on that. And I personally would sit there and go like, "Oh my God," you know? I mean, it's like they've been through this pain and they continue to go through it, and and a lot of it is enabled by people, and I don't I want to see people like tell their story, but I also would like to see them like get in touch with who they really are with themselves. I mean, imagine what would happen. There'd be people who died by drug overdoses, how that would have been different if they hadn't. But I mean, it's a hard call. I know I'm getting like
No,
I've
no,
just
no.
witnessed
It's it's the real. I mean, listen. I mean, I've done about 8 interviews with Jim Keltner, and that guy was saved several times in his life, losing his entire family from alcohol and drug
yeah,
abuse. And I mean, it
yeah,
does. It can take, and then it's a drag
yeah,
but to glorify that, or um, to put the spotlight on that when people are obviously psychically, not in great shape. I mean, that's a little
right,
bit sadistic. I mean, I just, the other thing is that all these heroes, even from before Brother Karsh's time, I mean, I remember Pat
yeah,
telling me, Pat, in our one of our first interviews, he was, I was just finding my voice 2011. I didn't know what was going on. And I was immortalizing what you're talking about. I was, these masters of music. And he goes, Jake, it was very humbling for me to be at Small's Paradise and walk into the bathroom and see one of my heroes. Before the set, he took out his teeth in order to play. And he
right,
didn't tell me who it was. But then when I interviewed Steve Grossman, he told me that was John Coltrane. And
yeah,
so what I'm saying is, like, the guy's playing on his gums. Okay. Like, how more humble can you get? To me, like, that was the other part about the magic of music, is that especially growing up in Pittsburgh, you can relate to this. Jazz was a blue collar music. People came to tap their foot to the music. It was after Art Blakey's line. My job is to wash away the dust of everyday life for those patrons
uh-huh,
who come in and sit there. And it's become. I just wanted you to talk about, what you talked about before was very, very important in the sense
hmm
of what Pat would say. When the show starts, anything can happen, and
That,
part of allowing the information to come through you, listening and letting it become one living, breathing organism, is
mhm.
being vulnerable. You have to be vulnerable, because if you're that wound up and you want to make sure that you have play everything perfectly, it's just not going to come across as well. So I wanted you to talk. I mean, the chance of people falling on their face, that's a possibility, but you're being vulnerable to the moment and that spontaneous note creation. And like you said, younger cats don't have as many opportunities as you did to play with their elders, fall down, pick themselves back up, and be vulnerable. And
Hmm.
that's something that I wonder about. You know, what are the things that how do you create? How did you learn to be vulnerable outside of J.C. Moses? Yelling at you and in the most loving way. I mean, can you
I
talk about
wasn't.
how you lent yourself to being a vulnerable cat on the bandstand?
Um, I really, yeah, I mean, it's just being open. I mean, when you're on the bandstand, I mean, you prepare to go on the bandstand. That's what you do. You practice to go on the bandstand. You play, you work out thing, and you work out what you got to work out. Just repeating over and over again. Obviously, what you do to go on the bandstand. As far as like opening yourself to vulnerability, I mean, there's nothing that I can remember doing that would actually like I can actually say, oh, this is what I did. I mean, I think you're looking for a down pat answer, and I don't think there is one. Everybody's different. I mean, some people can handle the vulnerability, and some people can't, and some people ebb and flow. I think most people ebb and flow with it, because I mean, sometimes you feel great about something. I mean, I felt great when I remember when I did a solo in the jazz band, and I knew it was a good one. I felt good about it, and when Nathan introduced me in the performance, and he said, I might say that that was a damn good solo. Well, that is gonna like pump you up. I mean, it just made me want to do better, and I did. But um, I mean, as far as like I've been in situations where it's been hard, where I've worked with people who were less than kind, um, and there's nothing that you can do to prepare yourself for that other than to try your best not to take it personal, which takes a lot of work, and it's something that it's nothing formulated, you know. It's the same thing with improvisation. It's not formulated. What Pat meant with that anything can happen, it's not going into the back and seeing Train take his teeth out. It was basically you're on the bandstand. What are you going to do there? What are you going to explore? What's going to happen? And if you start saying, I'll do this, you do this, I'll play this over this line here, it's like, that's not going to work, you know? I mean, you prepare for the performance is what I think it is. And you make sure you're as much at the top of your game as you are. And sometimes if you're not feeling good about something, maybe you can, instead of like coming and burning, start with the blues. I learned that from Ron Fadoli when I hadn't practiced in a few days. And we were doing a gig together. I said, man, I'm not ready to do this. I don't feel like I haven't practiced in like, a week. I don't feel connected. He says, well, then we'll warm up with the blues. And when he said that and we did it, and it was so non-judgmental and relaxed, the rest of the night was one of the best nights I ever had playing. And I was very, very happy about that. But again, all I can say is like, just keep yourself open and just, keep yourself centered. And there's no formula for that. It just takes a lot of work and a lot of life experience, you know. So
The
if
the
that
the
helps.
blues, I mean, that blues, can you go, it's just more the emotive feeling of a relaxed blues vibe, and that's what it was,
No,
or
no, it was no, Jake. It wasn't that. I mean, it wasn't about a blues. It wasn't about. It could have been, let's play a lullaby, or let's play just one chord right now. I mean, we could get really surreal with that, right? And say, let's play a C chord and just like meditate
yeah.
on that. But we're not going to do that. Okay, but no, Ron, he was very cool, calm about it. He says, well, then we'll open up with a slow blues. And it could have been a slow ballad, and it could have been a slow bossa nova. But the point is that he chilled me out with just by him saying in his wonderful, wonderful way. It's just like, okay, man, we'll start with a slow blues. It's like, okay, and it was great. I mean, that was great. And that, you don't have to come in burning, you know, and then and you could step back and think. It's like, you know, just you can't sit and think of everything you're going to play. It's like people say, "Oh, do I hear everything before I hear it before I play it?" It's like, Really, I can't hear him play that fast. And even like somebody said that asked that to Steve Morris, and he said, from the Dixie Drakes, he said, do you play everything you hear? And he says, oh God, no, I don't know anybody who can. And he's right, and even when I hear George Benson, when he plays, when he does it, he can sing along with what he plays because he's in his comfort area. When he goes out of his comfort area is really fun because then he's not singing pitches anymore. He might just do
Right.
like that. And you go like, and it's still cool because it's still George. You know what I'm saying? So that's great. You know, I don't think I'd have the guts to do that, but I know I've done it off mic and people have commented, and whatever. But it's
I want to be clear though. Like it could have been a bossa nova, it could have been,
it could have been
but
anything.
it was more about the idea of the person and the life force of that cat Fedoli
Right.
themselves.
It was that, and it would have been Ron. It could have been anybody similar, doing the same thing. It's like, okay, it's like let's start slow. Let's start slow. Let's agree, let's see where we're at. Because you come off the street a lot of, you come in from a lot of maybe, whatever's and family trauma,
Right.
whatever. And then you want to kind of forget that. And then once you feel it, um, then what happens after that is like great, then for the rest of the night it just builds from there and it's a more positive vibe, you know.
It's Kenny Karsh really just in a jovial jousting mood today. It's really I'm having a ball, and and I guess I should have been clear about this. I can't in modern recorded music,
Yeah.
instrumental music, modern recorded music, absolutely impossible to tell who people are. Some of that, a lot of it has to do with miking techniques. Now, I went back this morning and listened to Celebration, and
Okay.
you yourself cut through and
Hmm.
sounded like Kenny Karsh. And I'm just going to make it, and I'd love you to talk about it because you were at the session.
Yeah.
Um, the thing that happens here is it's not analog versus digital and Pro Tools, all that stuff. It is how the room is mic'd. For instance, you mic in modern recorded music, they feel the need to mic every single part of the drum kit now. And the thing that really is unfortunate of all those Eric Klaas records, just as an example, but there's
Uh-huh.
many, uh, there was something called good leakage. There was room sound. That's where the
Hmm.
spirit kicked into the music and offered an opportunity to, like you
Hmm.
said, be vulnerable with people you love.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I was wondering if you could talk about that session and if you remember, how you were mic'd and how the room was mic'd because
You
to
mean the
me
good
that
did you think there was good leakage on that record? Is that what you're asking me?
I just felt like your soul, because of the room sound, comes through very viscerally on that.
Okay, because the studio is gone now. Okay, that was one
Huh.
of the worst rooms we ever played in.
Yeah,
It
but
was
see
the
that.
most
But
no
hold
no
on a
no
second.
no
No,
no no no. Let me
go
finish.
ahead.
Let me
Go ahead.
finish.
Yeah, go
That was one of the worst rooms. We had, I think, a 16 track, if I recall correctly, 16 track mic on, which I think two or four tracks were not working. The drums were, in fact, mic'd individually. Ed Stacy was the engineer. Ed did a great job. It's amazing what he did. Okay. My guitar, I had brought my Polytone in because I thought, I wanted to, at the time I was young, get my sound. Any amp could have done it. Okay. Any good amp would have been okay. I didn't know that at the time because I was new to the process. Um, we were, I mean, we're basically isolated. Eric was isolated. Okay. So he really, we only had access to Eric through the headphones, if I'm not mistaken. There were many frustrating moments. That album was one of the hardest records to record because Muse Records, the formula that Joe had, okay,
Joe
Joe
Fields.
Fields
Yeah,
did, yeah,
yeah.
he basically was like, I want you guys to go in there, make a record, get out. I'll take a picture for the back cover with my camera, and that's it. Okay. And he actually, that was his motto. It's like you go in, you do your thing, and once you in and out of there, mixed, recorded, mixed in a day, and then I'm going to shoot the picture. That's it. Well, this record was not like that. Eric was kind of crossing boundaries on that record because a lot of things were written out, very intricate, And I know because I helped write. I mean, I didn't compose the parts, but I was certainly transcribing them, as I said. And so there was what I like about that record is that I remember there was a lot of hardship doing it. It was still enjoyable to make, and also it was painful to make. Okay. But as far as the miking goes, Ed did a great job with a studio that he had a lot of limitations with because they were not top tier. It was kind of sad that they weren't, but fortunately, he got a great sound out of there. The only thing I would have wanted more of is that we would have been able to add a little bit of reverb. It was too dry at times for me, but that was not my choice. It wasn't my record. So, so that's what I'm saying. There, if there was leakage, I couldn't tell. I mean, actually, on Celebration, Terry Silverlight, and you wouldn't know this, he broke a drum head on that take. And you would never know it because we kept going. It was a great take, and it was a take we used, and we didn't know it until he said it, and we all said, and the consensus was like, well, we're going to use that take. There it is. I mean, there was and Joe was getting pissed off that we were taking so long because he'd come in and says, look, I don't mean the guy with the big black mustache, but I swear to God, if you don't finish this up, I'll can this project. So.
I mean, what he had just this. I mean, Joe Chambers talked about.
No. This is Joe Fields.
I know who he is.
Yeah.
I interviewed Joe. I know.
No, I know that. I thought you were talking.
No,
Okay,
I'm
go
just
ahead.
saying a lot of people had qualms with how he recorded stuff or how he handled that.
Right.
But I wonder about, sometimes the greatest stuff. I mean, first of all, it wasn't until about 1976 till there was any kind of efficiency model as it related to recording an album. And still, I don't think being the kind of cats that you were, Barry Miles, Klaus, Karsh, Silverlight, Richmond, you weren't into, obviously you didn't even have the technology at that studio to really conform into an efficiency model. And so I wonder, like, in some ways, the jewel is the struggle. And today, because of this perfect technology and all this walling off and all this stuff done in isolation, that's really the key. My question was, that's what I should have asked. Eric might have been isolated.
Yeah.
We're all hitting at the same time.
Yeah.
No overdubs.
There were corrections. Yes, there were overdubs.
But minimal though.
I mean, we were playing. That was all straight playing. There were as far as I know, if there were any splices of, because it was all taped, so splice was like you get one to the other. I think there was maybe one or two, but that's it. And I don't know when that happened or when it didn't, because I don't remember. And I know there's possibilities today, but anybody who is a true artist is going to let's say override that. I think we have great ways to fix things. I just did a recording session with someone recently. It was just a children's lullaby album, and there was isolation, but I had communication with the singer through the door. We could see each other. Communication was just fine, and we were isolated, and the recording techniques were excellent, were beautiful, and so it's I don't think it's the technology getting better. I mean, some people are getting lazier, but that's their choice, I mean, the struggle, I'll agree with you on this, Jake, definitely. The struggle on Celebration was very much a part of the overall success, of that album. I mean, we worked really hard on that. We rehearsed really hard for this record. It wasn't just going in and playing over changes and then leaving. Okay.
Right.
It was like, shall we say, maybe playing a musical, except we had more, improvisational moments. Let's put it that way, But I gave you some.
You shedded on it. You rehearsed a lot, and then because Fields was rushing you out, it wasn't all this perseveration about. I mean, that's what my generation. I mean, listen, I'm 46. My generation and younger, they sit and through no fault of their own, they just ruminate on these recording sessions and try to make it perfect. Where it's like you guys went in, relied on your instinct and intuition and the prior practice and knocked it out. And it sounds
we didn't just knock it out. That's what the problem was. We were supposed to knock that out in one day. It took two.
Fields must have been furious.
Fields was pissed. Yeah, and this is nothing, nothing disrespectful to Joe. I mean,
Oh man, I
really,
love Joe
no,
Field. He's one of the hippest cats around, man.
this was his company. We came in with something very different. Probably Joe didn't kind of like oversee that as an executive producer. That maybe I don't know, but when he saw that shit was going on, and then the studio, itself, he didn't know anything about what was going on with any problems. He didn't care
Hmm.
about that. He said, just get this done, guys, or I'll can it, you know? And we got it done. And so we didn't just knock it out, we busted it, you know? So, I mean, that was my recollection of it. And let's just say it was a labor of love, blood, sweat, and tears. And it was worth it. I just wish they would have re-released it when they released Eric's catalog. Unfortunately, they didn't, you know?
Well, no, I
Okay.
mean, yeah, I mean, you're talking 2 days, and that at that time that was an inconvenience for Fields, but today we're talking about months of perfecting something that you're going to take all the soul out of it. You're going to make it
Right.
a sterile situation. The guy, I'm glad I brought this up because in my interview with Ahmad Jamal, he talked
Yeah.
about this cat, and I wanted to know if you ever came across him because he was obviously a fixture in Pittsburgh television, but also on the bandstand was Johnny Costa.
I love Johnny.
Talk about him as a person because Ahmad Jamal said a lot of people they never forget Johnny Costa.
I have nothing but fond memories of the man. I worked weddings with him. So we didn't actually play jazz on the stand, but I also did sessions for him. I remember doing one for Mr. Rogers Idlewild commercial he was doing, and he would say to me, "Kenny, I want you to do this for me, but not that rock and roll crap, but I need rock and roll crap." What it ended up me being doing was playing jazz on a Strat, and whatever he wanted was just fine. But I also marveled at his genius. The man was a musical God. Okay,
Genius.
literally. Now I don't know. He was a character. Okay, I remember I was at his funeral when I heard him talking on his like his own self eulogy because they played that.
Right.
Thank you God. I'm in this better place, and I'm listening to this. I'm kind of chuckling to myself because I'm thinking to myself, I remember your stories, Johnny. I remember all the fun things you used to tell me, all the crude stuff you used to tell me. I remember your genius. So I don't know what other people had to say about Johnny. Johnny didn't do the jazz club circuit, at least not when I was coming up. But I remember playing weddings with him, and he was a character. But he could sit down and he was another person who could not just improvise jazz, but I remember he sat down at the piano. I was sitting next to him at this wedding I was playing with him, and he was just playing solo cocktail. He says, "Hey, you like what I'm doing, Ken?" I said, "Johnny, it's brilliant, man. What is it?" He says, "How the hell do I know? I'm just making it up." It's like that's basically who Johnny
That's
was.
it, man.
Yeah, so I don't
Oh
I
man.
mean I mean so that is my recollection of Johnny.
Was there? I'm always curious because there's this insane, and I've only seen it briefly, but there was this amazing clip of early '80s of Klaus on Mister Rogers' Neighborhood playing.
Yeah.
What would that look like? Was there a Jingle House or the Rogers setup in Pittsburgh? Can you talk about like
Oh
what
yeah,
that?
yeah. Oh yes, of course. There was that was done at WQED, and that's a building on Fifth Avenue. Yeah, I remember we did shows. Like later on, Mr. Rogers was still doing his thing, and I remember being passing the set of Mr. Rogers, and I love that kind of stuff. So I was fascinated. So I was sitting there thinking like, oh my God, I'm right in the middle of this set. How cool is that? So yeah, we did. Yeah, they did all that in Pittsburgh, WQED. Okay, and that building is still WQED. They're not doing the TV things like they used to, but yeah, we did a lot of stuff there. Absolutely.
Was there also similar to Brunswick or Sigma Sound? Uh, was there a reputable recording studio for music in Pittsburgh as well?
The reputable recording, generally recording for anything was WRS Studios. That was in Oakland, I think on Semple Street.
Wow.
It was run by Olaf Kuskler, who was an engineer who emigrated, I think, from Germany. and my dear late friend Victor Levitas, who was from Russia. And these are like top-notch European engineers who could cut tape into 100 pieces, put it back together again, you'll not hear anything. Okay. So Nathan, I mean, I actually Victor, you know, I remember there was another studio called Audio Innovators, but they weren't as like they weren't as prominent in the commercial end of it as WRS was. WRS was cutting stuff for WTAE, WQED, WQEX. Everything went there with the place was like I mean, back at the time it was modern technology, but it was great to be in a studio that all the right gear, custom put together, and old EMT reverb, which was like inspiring to me, and basically, Victor sticking a mic all the way up in the air to record an acoustic guitar, and I'd say to like Victor, shouldn't that be close? He says, kid, you just worry about playing the guitar, you know
Plays the guitar.
plays the guitar, kid. And basically these guys knew how to get a sound. Like you think like, well, you got to do it like this and this way down here, but it's like here's the mic up above me, and I'm going, and it's a Neumann, it's a high quality mic, and I have the headphones on, and I cannot distinguish the headphone sound from the outside sound. That's how good this mic was. That's how good Victor was. I mean, he just recorded me one time just for the hell of it. He said, "Come on and bring a couple guys, just record. I feel like recording you." It was great. I wish I still had the full tape of that. I have a kind of like just kind of a weird uh, a mishmash of me overdubbing on a thing that he put together with me. But I don't know where it is at this point. But yeah, that was the place back then. There was also God the other studio, but it's in oh God, I'm forgetting the name of it, and I'm sorry that I am. But I don't think they were doing as much jazz. But
What was
WRS
it?
was doing.
Was your do you remember your first studio session? I mean, on an actual date, was it Celebration or was it before that?
My first, I was gonna say I mean, my first time in the studio was me making those demos. Okay, so I don't think I really did a studio date until, yeah, probably till the Celebration date. Or basically I can't remember. It's been a while, so I may be
Yeah.
blocking some stuff out. But the Celebration date, I mean, put it this way: I did my demo at Audio Innovators at the time. It's no longer in business, but that studio was impressive. It was like amazing. And then I go to and WRS, which is old school and equally amazing. Then I go to Dimensional Sound, which is just a beat up little hole in the wall studio in New York City. And it's like, wow, okay. But you know, I think the first real studio thing I probably did was in fact, the Celebration date.
I'm piggybacking on that because I think one of the magical things about uh, at that time, right at that point, 78, 79. I mean, I remember
Uh-huh.
Joe Sample telling me that, there were 300 uh, different record labels, and then the big six companies consolidated all of them around 1980. And then you had also all this regional radio where
Uh-huh.
you could listen to public radio in Maine, and they
Uh-huh.
were playing a very different uh, bag than what was going on at the NPR affiliate in San Diego. And then that became completely interconnected. And I just wonder if you can talk about, it doesn't have to be with Celebration, but the first time you heard a cut of yours or a tune you played on the radio, hardline radio in the car, or what that was like.
Well, you mean like from my CD personally? That didn't happen till
No,
later
I
anyway.
mean like was there a place that played the Celebration record? Did you ever hear that on the radio?
Yeah, WDUQ at the time when it was actually like Dave Fabili, who still is active in radio. He was very, very contemporary. I mean, I loved his show. Like I'd be driving home from a gig on Sunday and I'd have him on the radio. It was great. And so yeah, he would play our record. I mean, when Tony Mulwad was a DJ, he was the DJ for WDUQ as well. he was a little more straight ahead jazz. So Eric's record at Celebration would not get played as much, but Dave Fabili or other people, who were more contemporary would do it. So yeah, I'm sure, I don't remember when I heard it there, but I'm sure that it was played. But oftentimes when my stuff gets played on the radio, other people tell me, and I said, "Oh, really? That's great. I'm glad they're still playing it." Because like somebody else like, "Hey, Ken, I heard, your conversations CD a cut from him in on like whatever." I said, "Yeah, great, man. I'm glad it's being played." Jonathan Miles, God bless him, will acknowledge if it does get radio play. He'll announce it on Facebook, which is great. I'm just never in the room when it happens. Does that make sense?
Oh, I love it. No, it's
Yeah.
great. Kenny Karsh, man, we got to do another set down the road. But I just want to say, thank you for being a great stewardman of music, and carrying the torch through this time, and just being around a lot of the elders, and understanding that it doesn't happen in a vacuum. That you got a story, you have to have a story to tell, and I
Well,
appreciate you sharing yours, man.
well, I appreciate you. I appreciate you having me on, Jake. I'll leave with this. It's like as far as like, I know I'm in a nice position to be hopefully a mentor to somebody, and I'm always and I hope what I try to do, and I hope that people see it, and I think they do, is that I'm always open, like to like share. I will always do it in a way that is not judgmental, that's going to be encouraging, because I know what it's like to have that done to me. I know what it's like to have done it to people and not meant to do it and then realize my mistake later. So my mission is to be open and be accepting. I mean, really, if you want to talk about music being, diverse, I like diversity in music, which is why I said what I said about the musicals. My son said to me, like he said to me, "Dad, you're the only one of your peers that doesn't put down rap," and he's right.
It's
So
all music. I mean,
it's all music,
it's all music. Duke Ellington, man, and it was such a treat. The guy who connected us, I got to go to a rock hall last Saturday to see
Uh-huh.
these three incredibly explosive young bands, and Angelo Versace got up and played on an electric keyboard, the funkiest I've ever heard that cat. I mean, he's a ridiculous player. It was just
Right.
great to see him in that sort of in a different bag than more the classic jazz bag that I'm used to seeing him in.
Hmm.
So anyway, it's just it doesn't matter, to me. It's about urgency, tension and release, pulse and dynamics. However you want to put that into a genre is good, fine with me. But you know what?
Hmm.
Stay open. That was Pat Martino and Eric Klaas's mentality. And I pray someday that you call Eric and you can still strike up a conversation with him, and let him know that he still means a lot to a lot of people out there, man.
Oh, I mean, if I talk to him, I will. I mean, it's like at someday when that's right. I mean, I'll try to find a way. There is a video of us, you know, when Don DePaulis passed away. There is a video on my YouTube of Eric playing flute. We did a tribute to Don. Tony DePaulis, his son, helped with that. And look up Consciousness on my YouTube channel.
Yes.
You'll see, that this was much after, he was at least like coming out just to at least tribute, do the tribute to Don, and was welcoming to have him on playing flute. Wish he would have played sax, but we'll take what he's comfortable with.
I mean, the
So
guy.
yeah,
You're very blessed, man. So much love, Karsh. We'll talk soon, man.
absolute.
All
Thank you,
right,
Jake.
dude. Be cool,
Absolutely.
man. Bye.
Be cool. Bye
Bye.
bye.